got a new sleep mask.
You know what's it?
What?
Hmm?
You go.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
You were going to say?
You fucking talk.
Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals Week 1. Was it a Week 1? I am your host, Eric Morgan. I'm so sorry.
I'm Evan Davis. No, that was a good one. That was a good one. Because there's some weak games across the spectrum. It's interesting. So we decided today, we're not necessarily going to do this every week, but we felt it was important today to reset our power rankings after week 1, because as we recorded our season preview episodes and we were dropping our predictions for every team at the end of every episode, the situation became a lot more dynamic and fluid than we anticipated. So
Impossibly
we
so.
recorded too many episodes before the Sophia Wilson news to go back and redo them, but that also just completely changes our perspective on everything. So even though it's a little bit cheating because we have a week of actual games under our belts at this point, it still felt right to just reset and say, this power ranking is probably what our season predictions are ultimately going to be.
And now that we have like a week of data and have a sense of, generally speaking, who these teams are and what they plan to roll out, we're going to keep our preseason predictions what they are. But this is really just to dial in a little bit more and get a better sense of the lay of the land in the league, and maybe where we made some mistakes in preseason and maybe where we didn't make some mistakes in preseason. Our lists are similar enough that, Evan, I'm just going to work off of your preseason ranking list and we can go from there.
Okay.
So I'll announce where my ranking is of these teams, but I feel like this gives us a good framework to discuss where these teams are. So at least to start, and we will not belabor this point for the mercy of all of the fans of this particular franchise.
We're agreed on 14th.
The 14th place club, the Chicago Stars, is that where you think they belong after weekend 1?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. For sure. Maybe it wasn't quite the 6-0 drubbing that it ended up being on the scoreline, but boy, oh boy, it's dire. It's dire in Chicago, and granted, things will improve in attack a little bit once Ludmila comes back, but man, if Mallory Swanson does not suit up for this squad, it is lights out. Samantha Staub, when she starts, things will get a little bit better for the defense too, but large hill to climb for them to not be considered 14th place. Like, it was a professional team against an amateur team. That's what it read when they got whipped by Orlando down in Incheon Coast Stadium.
You know what's so funny about this? When you take a look under the hood, you know, last year's 4-1 playoff defeat, which this was an immediate rematch of, I feel was so much more emphatic than this 6-0.
For sure. Yeah, there was some finishing luck going on, no doubt.
Yeah, you look at the data here. Orlando generated 2.23 non-penalty XG. Very good. In that playoff game last season, Barbara Banda single-handedly on 7 shots.
That's right.
Put up like 2.7 XG on her own. And Chicago seeded like 4.1, 4.2 XG in that game.
Last year's playoff game, maybe not the benchmark anyone should use for anything. That was a record-setting performance.
Totally. And what I would say is, if Chicago fans are feeling worse about their team after Friday's defeat, your team was worse last year in the playoffs than they were on Friday. That's damning with faint praise, but that is an improvement.
Yeah.
So 14th, the Chicago. Moving on, Evan, you have ranked 13th, the San Diego Wave. I have them ranked 11th. After that opening fixture, the 1-1 draw that we were both at in Los Angeles yesterday, how are you feeling about sort of where this team ranks?
I think I'm higher on them now. They did some very interesting things, namely how Jonas Scheidewald built his midfield, which was to pull Ken Zadali a little bit deeper, often sitting as a double pivot, and then pushing up as needed in attack. And Savannah McCaskill was essentially the holding player, which she's basically never done as a professional. But given her mobility issues and given the other options available, like, it was kind of the smart move.
I agree.
And then the other thing that was really intriguing was moving Maria Sanchez centrally into that more or less number 10 roving spot that I think maybe has some potential. It's just, I never would have imagined Maria Sanchez as a central player, but like, Idevall clearly sees Gia Corley, who had a very nice game, as more of a wide player than someone who can play inside, even though she's done both. And so how do you make sure everybody is accounted for? How do you get your best players on the field? And you put Corley on the left wing and you move Sanchez central. So if Sanchez has the kind of passing vision in central areas as she does on the wing, that might actually make her a better player because that's her calling card, right? That's her carrying tool. She needs to be able to break lines. And so you do that from more dangerous areas of the field, which the number 10 would be in, then that's got a lot of interesting potential to it.
I agree. I thought Gia Corley had an excellent debut. I think what we saw early on is what happens when you let Delphi and Cascarino have space.
For sure.
Which is a huge problem. Angel City did adjust mid-match to deal with that. And I sort of wondered if that alone wouldn't kill San Diego's attack. But frankly, they brought on Melanie Barcenas, who I thought had just like tremendous performance off the bench as a 17-year-old. This was a different Barcenas than I felt like I had watched under other management. 10 of 10 passing, 2 shots on target, a chance created. That's like really good off the bench. It felt like she was able to play like nice ISO ball. So maybe they got a little more there. I have them ranked 11th. I think that that's within a place or two of right. And I'm like pretty comfortable with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if this San Diego team starts congealing into something a little bit better than either of us had estimated a little bit sooner than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, all of this could also get tossed out the window because we're evaluating this on one game.
But like the worst fears I think either of us may have had for this team.
I don't think they're 13th anymore.
I think 11th might be where they're at.
I'd go with 11th. I like the idea of us trying to come to a consensus on these power rankings, if we can.
I think that that's good.
So I'm happy with San Diego at 11th. I'm good with that.
Yeah, okay. So we've got San Diego at 11th. After a reasonably accomplished performance and what was frankly a pretty fun up and down game to watch. On your point about McCaskill, I think this is the smartest thing that they could have done with McCaskill, whose main problems are slowing down the offense, not generating play fast enough, and taking bad shots from distance. Playing her deeper basically limits all of those 3 of her worst qualities, in my opinion, while accentuating what she does do well, which is when she has time picking a pass.
Yeah, and if you don't think that Favor Emmanuel is quite ready to step in as a number 6, then you don't have anybody else to play that deepest lying midfield spot. So this is the solve. And it may not be permanent. Maybe they just need more time for Emmanuel to get her legs underneath her, and then things will change, in a few weeks' time. Who knows? But for now, I think it's a smart move.
Moving up the list, Evan's preseason ranking, we both have this team at 12. So the Portland Thorns. This is a really tough one to rank for me because of the opponent. Evan, where is your head at?
That's going to be the case essentially for every game this week. Whereas if the top 3 dominate, or the top 2 really dominated, the next 2 performed pretty well, but maybe it's just first week jitters, injury stuff. And then everybody else playing everybody else is just, I think I described it to you last night, as like the positive ends of 2 magnets trying to touch. Portland is 12th. I think I'm good with them staying there. They started Jaden Perry, which was unexpected.
Surprise.
Means that maybe she had a better showing of it in preseason than someone like Diane did. I believe Rob Gale after the game said that Sam Hyatt wasn't 100% yet, which is why she didn't feature. But Perry over Diane was telling, but Perry also looked like a rookie center back.
And still also managed to look better than Isabel Obeys. We got DM'd in the middle of the match, and somebody was just like, I don't know who did the scouting on Obeys, and it was fair. The Portland backline is as troubling as we thought it might be.
Yeah, after game 1, yes, for sure.
After game 1, but also road game in Kansas City that starts before noon is as trappy a fixture as you're going to get.
Yeah.
Especially like with a team that really hasn't played together much.
And I'll say that there was some commentary both on the broadcast and online about Kansas City not playing well in the second half or Portland really finding some control. No, the Current just took their foot off the gas and decided to ride the game out because they weren't in any danger. Like there was a mistake that led to the Moultrie goal. But otherwise, Kansas City was quite comfortable, I think, from wire to wire. Dana Castellanos looked not bad in that more forward, wingy position that she was playing. But if her strike partner is Alexis Spanstra, then, I don't know, this team's still dead in the water. I think 12th is perfectly reasonable for them.
Yeah, I would say that the bright spots in this game are once Olivia Moultrie was shuttled back into the center of the park,
Yeah.
I felt like at least there was a focal point
For sure.
to play around. And a team like Kansas City can abuse that with their midfield. But Kansas City is part of the class of this league. I think that Olivia Moultrie, who still found a way to get a goal and was unlucky to ricochet her penalty off the crossbar, this was a promising use of Moultrie, a thing I know we were all concerned about.
But also, she took the majority of her touches like deep on the flank. Like that can't continue. You have to make sure that that second half of judgment is the norm rather than the bug.
Absolutely. She needs to be on the receiving end of slipped passes that turn into chances, and so often was not featured there. I think that core midfield of Coffey, Sugita, and Moultrie with a little Jessie Fleming in there probably is good enough to see them through a number of tough fixtures. They can figure something out on the back line. We'll adjust our priors on this. But right now, they are a midfield in search of a defense and an attack. 12th feels right.
All right. For 11th place on my rankings. Houston 11th?
I have them 13th.
I think maybe I agree with you.
There is a lot that people who watch Houston can feel encouraged by, but I feel great about sticking Houston back at 13 after a game against the Spirit that they played reasonably well in. I still don't know where these goals come from.
Yeah, they played reasonably well. It seems like there is an actual tactical structure that Fabrice Gautrat is trying to implement and develop as the year goes on, and maybe they get better with that. But Washington has 12 players on the injury list who weren't available, some insane number like that, and they still had the better chances. They still didn't end up giving up too many strong chances either. I understand people wanting to be optimistic about Houston, but I think 13th is perfectly fair, especially knowing that like 5th to 13th is going to be separated probably by 5 or 6 points.
For me, I think this is one of those games where you take a look at the XG race chart and it tells you the story of the game, which is to say that this was a 2-1 result, but Washington was free and clear in that first half.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit took their foot off the gas, which allowed Houston back in the game. But then once Houston was kind of back in the game, not a lot there for them. I felt like this was Jonathan Heraldez' side really managing the fixture as opposed to Houston really in competing at times. Again, granted, this is a good debut for Fabrice Gautrat, and considering where Houston was last season, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by, but this is a long road. So 13th for me right now, I don't think they have the solidity of that Portland midfield at any line of their team. So I'm happy to keep them in 13.
But you know what? On Patreon, we're going to be talking about rookie performances, some rookies we didn't expect necessarily to get a lot of minutes, and Maggie Graham will definitely be a central part of that conversation.
That's right. She did look the part. Moving up to our shared 10th place team preseason, the Seattle Reign. This one I'm really curious about because I think that if you're a Reign supporter, you could probably pull a lot from this fixture positively. I'm not sure that's what I would do. Go ahead.
If Laura Harvey does not think Olivia Vandriat is ready to go on day one, then this is potentially a midfield that's going to soak up a lot of playing time if it's healthy. And that should scare the shit out of Seattle Reign fans. We talked about it a lot with Silves on the season preview. Like, the average age of that midfield trio, I think, was like 33. That's rough. That's rough. I mean, yes, some positive signs like Nerelia Mondesir flashed some quality. Maybe Jordan Huitema is feeling a little bit more in control now that she is the go-to striker. Maddie Curry looked good. Obviously, the Emery Adamas goal was a bit of a was a bit of a wacky one, but
yeah.
I just don't know how this team manages to find any kind of tactical coherence. Lynn Biandola wasn't available. That's a really worrying sign given how much time she has missed due to injury last year. Maddie Darlene, it's one game, but talking about rookies who looked the part, she didn't to me. It's one game, so whatever. But it really does come down to that midfield and how that midfield can gel and function and maintain a level of athleticism that this league demands. I just don't know if they can do it.
I probably have a slightly rosier view of Maddie Darlene's debut because I think a lot was being asked of her. And at least
Fair.
in that initial 30 minutes, I thought she put together a number of threatening runs without great end product, but on turf in the rain in Seattle on your debut. I'll forgive some of that.
1,000%.
That said, this is so concerning. The point you're making about Laura Harvey and the midfield, G just she doesn't have it anymore.
She really doesn't.
And Jess Fishlock really can't cover for her running.
That's right. Yeah, that's the problem. If G had an athletic 8 or if Fishlock had a more mobile 10, this is potentially a different conversation. But the two of them together, it's like pouring blackstrap molasses through a sieve.
If both of them, because Fishlock played brilliantly in her mid-30s, if both of them are 5 years younger, we're talking about a very different team.
For sure.
But Laura Harvey, I worry, really doesn't see it that way.
Well, she just doesn't have any other options, and that may not have been her choice.
But also, she does have longer-term planning options that she could have adjusted to. And again, you're right. If Van der Jagt isn't a priority just to be in there shuttling and running, they did come back in this fixture after going down and put together chances. But that Emery Adames chance, which is really fluky and turns into a goal, I mean, Szczepanski literally clears the ball onto Adames's foot. That's as unfortunate a ricochet on a broken little play that does happen on a rainy night in Seattle from time to time. But that chance is their best XG chance, and that's not a chance that they created. That's fluke.
Does Seattle stay 10th, or do we actually bump them down to 11th and move San Diego up?
My head says that's actually what we should do. Gotham is a harder opponent, so I'm fine if we want to keep them at 10 than Angel City ever is going to be. And the conditions were unfriendly to both teams. You will get Lynn Biondolo back at some point, theoretically.
All right, let's keep them 10th then.
I'm fine keeping them 10th, but I will say that all of my reservations and all of your reservations, and frankly, all of Sylv's reservations that we discussed in our preview episode hold. There was nothing new to learn about Seattle in this debut. All right, moving up to 9th place. Evan intended to have Louisville in 9th, and then Sophia Wilson was pregnant and that jiggered things around. So technically, Evan has Angel City in 9th. Let's do Angel City first. Angel City debuts against San Diego at home. What were your impressions of that game?
That it sucked. I mean, I think the two goals were very exciting. There wasn't a lot of chance creation outside of them. You know, I think the XG per shot split was like 0.07 to 0.06 or something. Maybe a little bit higher for Angel City. Again, it felt like two pretty equal, not especially talented forces just kind of playing a game of attrition. San Diego controlled the final third, but really couldn't produce much in the box. And Angel City, for all of their intention to stop leaking in transition, got hit on transition a bunch of times. Didn't love that. I think our concerns about Alana Kennedy remain valid. Riley Tiernan looked pretty good as a rookie center forward.
I was on the fence about her performance because she lost the ball a number of times in a position where you do lose the ball a number of times, but this is by no means the best center back pairing she's going to face all season.
No, it's true. A lot of last-minute juggling because we haven't really talked about Sydney Leroux announcing that she is stepping away for now to focus on mental health stuff. So there is a pretty big hole in center forward right now.
I think that is potentially, and with all love and respect to Sydney Leroux, the one thing that I thought last year that really kept Angel City from unlocking a lot of their potential was that Sydney Leroux is kind of immobile at this point in her career. That often meant clogging the middle when Alyssa Thompson wanted to dribble inward and cut inside, and often meant that Alyssa Thompson was dribbling into the defense. And the one thing you can say about the sort of mobile front that they had yesterday is that Alyssa Thompson was able to find space and create shots because there were runs going off of her. Alyssa Thompson put together, for my money, one of the better games she's had as an Angel City player.
Absolutely. Seb Bush, he's at NWSL Stat on Blue Sky, produces all these incredible match reports of every NWSL game. One of the additions he's made this year is taking a player's single game G plus value, basically the possession value that they generated relative to their position, and turned it into a rating scale, the way that you would see on FotMob or SofaScore or anywhere. He also puts the distribution of all of their single game G pluses and marks where that game falls on that distribution curve. And Alyssa Thompson put up, out of 10, put up a 7.5. Very good. And that is definitely toward the right-sided tail of that density curve. So yes, she did put on a strong performance. She had good decision-making, I think, in general in the box, which is something that we've always talked about. It was a thing that she needed to work on. At times was like the first 10 minutes was playing as center forward. The front three was very mobile and everybody was moving around and Thompson played both wings. But like that really jumped out to me that maybe this could be an interesting solve, make her a Sophia Wilson-like center forward. It's not that they don't have Sydney Leroux anymore. It's that they don't have anybody naturally suited for the position. At least Leroux was a number 9. Now, maybe Riley Tiernan, but she's a rookie. Casey Fair has been with the team for over a year, but she's still not even 18 yet. The organization hasn't played her very much, so question marks there. Thompson as a roving center forward to pull center backs out of position and try, make inside, outside, and outside, inside runs with Emsley and maybe someone else kind of running around causing havoc is interesting to me.
The way the goal was generated with Kennedy Fuller just like turning, flipping, and playing like a diagonal to an on-running, counter-attacking Alyssa Thompson. I think if you end up with Kennedy Fuller playing like a 10 with two sort of roving wings, there's something there. I think that once Julie Dufour is like integrated into this team more, you suddenly have like real dynamism available to you. Thompson, bar an incredible save in the first half by Kaylin Sheridan on not a particularly high XG volley. I believe it was Claire Emsley who gets on the end of a Thompson cross and forces Sheridan into like one of the better saves of the weekend, if not the best save of the weekend. Angel City probably gets, despite not winning the XG battle in this game, did create, when they created chances, a handful of decent chances and then took a handful of pot shots. So the distribution that gets to their not particularly impressive XG per shot is like a handful of very good chances and a handful of you shouldn't have taken that shot. And if that decision-making improves, I think that Angel City could give a lot of teams in the mushy middle of this table very serious problems with their youth, pace, and frankly, just ability to run. Also, Sarah Gordon and Savvy King, beyond that opening sequence that turns into the Corley goal, were solid for long stretches of this game. Sarah Gordon in particular looked like she had a return to form game. I'm okay with Angel City right now. Let's go to Louisville and then let's figure out where we want to rank these two teams.
Well, we're forgetting one team that I think is
Utah.
Yeah, that's part of this little collection.
We're going to talk about all three of these teams and then we'll figure out our ranking because I think there might be some disagreement here. Let's go to Louisville next. Hard game to assess.
Yeah, the weather, the kickoff was pushed back 3 hours because of the storms running through Kentucky, and the storms were safe to play in, but it was pouring rain the whole time.
If that had been Snapdragon Field, we would have been playing in 3 inches of water. Credit to the grounds crew at Lynn Family. But that game was drenched. I know that they were expecting a big opening day crowd there. I understand why no one came. It was Louisville being Louisville, but Louisville looked really good for those first 70 or so minutes. Emma Sears, I thought, was as dangerous as you'd want Emma Sears to be.
Oh, yeah. Emma Sears was great.
If you're looking for like a breakout candidate this season, she put together a great season last year, but like breakout candidate this season right there, Emma Sears.
Feel a little flat on them, but maybe that just means high floor as opposed to low floor like Angel City might have. So maybe they're a little bit ahead of Angel City. I don't know.
I think the thing that made them particularly good in this game is that they played the conditions as well as the opponent. They really understood that they were going to have to win this game on the counter on a slick surface. They coaxed North Carolina, who are more than happy to play mediocre possession ball forward, and then just hit them constantly. And North Carolina kind of didn't have an answer for long stretches of this game. And the very Louisville aspect of this is they didn't put this game to bed.
Right.
They let North Carolina right back in it And Riley Jackson ends up scoring a goal that on a dry day maybe doesn't come to her because there is no rebound. But it's a wet game and finishes comfortably. But this was like the drawiest of draws that we had this weekend. That said, I mean, Louisville generated 1.4 non-penalty XG and beat the possession team by 0.2 of an XG. And I would say it was marginally the better team on the day. So I didn't have North Carolina rated highly. I know that we're both on the fence about aspects of that team. Maybe it's just a higher floor. Let's move on and talk Utah. I know you've got some Utah thoughts.
Not too many of them. I don't know how I feel about this game. Bay was probably good for a win. That just didn't come. And the lineup that Jimmy Coonrat's rolled out, again, is being dictated a great deal by injury availability because Alex Loera isn't there. But we saw Nuria Rabano get into the game. We saw Dana Ferderer step in. Bianca St. George started. And Macy Fraser started. There's just a couple of players I wasn't expecting to see. Clearly, he doesn't feel like Aisha Solorzano is maybe 100% match fit right now to start, even though she got about half an hour at the end of the game. I didn't love their performance, if I'm going to be honest. St. George, that's a good goal.
It's a great goal. It's a great pass from Mandy McGlynn. It's maybe the best pass that was played all weekend.
Moving Allie Sentner centrally as more of a number 10 was something that we actually talked about on the season previews, that maybe that's the area of the field where she should be playing anyway. But I think it's really easy for defenses to shut her down because they know what she's going to do. Like, I don't recall any open looks that she got on goal, do you? From long range or from close range?
Fully clean looks, no. My feeling with this game, and we'll get to it when we talk about Bay, is a little bit more about Bay and a little bit less about Utah's reactive way of playing. I mean, Utah grabs the most against the run of play goal that I've seen in a while after being basically battered for the opening 11 minutes. But I felt in terms of their defensive shape and solidity, that was decent to good. That's maybe not how you want to be dictating games when you're playing at home. But the problem with Utah felt like entirely about what's happening going forward and very little to do with in terms of defensive solidity. They frankly took Rachel Kundananji out of the game for long stretches of it. If you're going to try to beat Bay, I think that's like issue number one.
That's the game plan, yeah.
Don't let Kundananji beat you.
Just on the flip side, like Mina Tanaka got, 3 touches in the box all game. That's not good.
No, they had very little going forward. That does give me pause, but also they didn't break after conceding kind of a wonder goal. Kiki Pickett hits one from outside the box. They were the worst team in the second half after the adjustments by some margin. But, I mean, this was a very 1-1 draw for me.
1,000%. So, 7 through 9, how do we want to order these? What does your gut tell you?
I think Louisville of those 3 teams was probably the most impressive to me.
So keep them 7th.
I still kind of think Utah is 7th for me, but I understand dropping them down a place or two.
Here's our compromise. I'd like to keep Louisville 7th, but I'm happy if you want to make Utah 8th and Angel City 9th.
It's so mushy. For all the nice things I said about Louisville, they're still the team that shipped a goal to a North Carolina team that was largely out of it.
Maybe what we need to do here is we just really need to hammer the point home, like we did a lot during the season previews, is that like what's going to separate 5th from 12th or 6th from 11th or whatever grouping you want to make is basically nothing. But what it also means is that 7th place might not be a good team this year. 8th place might not be a good team this year. 6th place might not be a good team this year, but they'll still go to the playoffs.
You want to drop Utah down?
Just because we're going on our gut reactions and what we saw over the weekend and how that might adjust our priors, it feels like they should be in 9th. But if you want to put them 8th, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Let's do Louisville, who played the best team and was the best on the day, 7th. I think I want to do Utah 8th and Angel City 9th.
Yeah, that's fine.
And maybe Utah is 9th. They were not great. Yeah, let's do Utah 9th.
Okay.
So Utah 9th, Angel City 8th, Louisville 7th.
All right.
That's fair to me.
Okay.
But again, yeah, the margins between these teams feel
so small.
Basically nothing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. This is actually one of our larger disagreements, but let's go with your rankings again. You had Bay 6th. I had them 4th. I do think that there is some room to move Bay here. Bay came out, battered Utah for the opening 10 minutes, gave away a really cheap goal on a brilliant ball from Mandy McGlynn, but just like no answer over the top. It was a sort of shocking amount of naivete that turned into that goal. and then needed an outside-the-box screamer from Kiki Pickett to essentially level this game. I think the 3-5-2 was kind of a disaster.
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. The idea was to give... I mean, what was the idea, actually? So you don't have Emily Menges available. So you bring in Kelly Hubley, and then the decision was made to make Joelle Anderson, who's traditionally a number 8, make her a third center back and give Alyssa Melanson and Caprice Dydasco the room to roam as wing backs. You brought in Taylor Huff, who we weren't sure if she was going to start, but
she had a great game.
She did start, and she was very good. Penelope Hocking didn't start, which was surprising to me. Dydasco, I don't think she can be a wingback anymore. Part of the reason McGlynn was so successful is that Hubley and Dydasco completely blew coverage on Saint Georges. And you don't really have any other options who can play a right wingback with any type of skill or put in the miles that it's going to require. So it feels like a back four makes more sense. But also was this all to try and get Joelle Anderson into the game? What was the point of that? Why was Dorian Bailey on the bench? Why didn't you just go with the triangle that worked in midfield last year, at least to start the season? That didn't make any sense to me. Is Hocking not 100% fit? Is that why she didn't start? There were some really weird question marks around personnel that I think led to this formation that just did not seem to click.
I think the idea, if I were to step into Albertine Montoya's troubled mind, I think the idea was Utah does not have quality out wide, and that we can overwhelm and pin them back by using wingbacks, and then still have a numerical advantage if we drop Kundananji a little deeper as that second striker into the midfield. And we can sort of just win these number battles across the field. And frankly, that's exactly what happened for the opening handful of minutes. It didn't turn into anything better than a good Taylor Huff chance that McGlynn saves, parries over the bar pretty brilliantly. But once Utah adjusted to that, once they were playing with a lead, and Utah was happy to sit back a little bit more, the 3-5-2 became completely toothless. Moreover, Federer and Zornoza, and to an extent Del Fava, just took Kundananji out of the game. At the end of the first half, she had 12 touches. That's tremendous defense.
She finished the game with 36 touches.
Which says that once the formation adjustment was made in the second half, suddenly they were able to unlock her a little bit more. Did it turn into anything? No. I still worry about Oshuala's ability to... She had a breakaway that she kind of couldn't turn into a breakaway. And pace is supposed to be her thing. I'm a little bit worried about what Oshuala is at this point as a leading striker. That's not to say that most teams wouldn't be improved by having her, but Kundananji is the real article. Oshuala isn't doing enough or generating enough for me.
She didn't take a shot the whole game. It's a little dicey, so do we compromise and call them fifth now? Because it doesn't feel like you think they're fourth.
They put up the second highest expected points total on the weekend.
Sure.
They did it on the road against a team that's been a problem for them. I'm fine to move them down. I just don't think Gotham justified getting moved up either.
So let's maybe hold off and just talk about this 4 to 6 group.
I think the next team we're going to talk about kind of belongs in a class of their own. Let's talk North Carolina. Whether we can learn anything from that rain game, full stop. But the good is Jaden Shaw playing the 10 and moving Ashley Sanchez out. The good is Sean Nahas agrees. The bad is still a team not good at creating chances.
No. 0.08 XG per shot. You have Jaden Shaw and Ashley Sanchez and you're playing Racing Louisville. Yes, the weather's the weather. And it's game 1 and everybody's still figuring things out. But boy, oh boy, that just is a continuation of previous patterns. Don't love that. I wouldn't hate putting them 6th here. The defensive performance wasn't incredible. It was fine. It was serviceable. But that's the thing that North Carolina needs to be sure is buttoned up when the chances go begging. But I also know that it's game 1. And Jaden Shaw is Jaden Shaw, and this thing is going to start cohering a little bit more as time passes. But that also doesn't completely obscure the flaws that we discussed in preseason. So I know I had them 5th. If you wanted to move them 6th, I don't think I would be super mad about it, but I still think I'm probably higher on them than you are.
First off, great that Riley Jackson got her goal and was trusted in that midfield. She put together one of the better games that anyone on North Carolina had. If she really grows into that role and takes some of the burden off of Denise O'Sullivan simply having to be there, fantastic for them. Again, the further you get forward, the more I just sort of shake my head. Monica Matsukubo had another one of those I don't get it games. At times, it kind of looked like Carolina were playing a 4-2-4 just because there was not a lot of distinction between who was supposed to be 10 and who was supposed to be striker. That shape probably will sort itself out eventually, but we did see a drop-off from Ashley Sanchez. Ashley Sanchez did not have a great game. I still don't know how these pieces all come together. Again, you're right. Generating sub 1 XG against Louisville, and frankly, would have been a lot lower than that, bar the Jackson chance that turns into the goal. I trust Jaden Shaw. I think she's great, but I want to keep him 6 just because lots of questions. If Sean Nahas is struggling to figure out how to beat Louisville on the road, not even beat Louisville, but just be the better team in a game against Louisville, I do not have a lot of faith that this Carolina team's going to figure it out.
Let's have them 6th, and then let's debate Gotham and whether they go 4th or 5th.
I think on this one, Gotham, you had 4th preseason. I had debated moving after the Montoya news, Gotham up. After their performance against Seattle, an easier team, but, Gotham didn't roll out their best lineup either, and for large portions of this game, really did boss it. The good from Gotham is that back line is still real good. On Katrinberger, still real good. As you move further forward, what did you think of Szczepanski's debut?
I liked her. I thought she was sparky.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Didn't know she was going to get the start, but they needed a winger given that Midge Purce is off the SEI list but still not available. I liked the cut of her jib. I mean, she generated 0.7, 0.8 expected assists on the night. She went the full 90 essentially. How much more can you ask for from a rookie winger?
No, I thought she was great. 58 touches, 4 touches in the opposition box, 4 chances created. Yeah, hell yeah.
4 key passes, 6 progressive passes. That's great.
I thought she was really solid and really unfortunate to be a contributing factor in the Seattle goal. I think at the time I wasn't as harsh on the Jalen Howell infinitely higher than it should have been boot. In retrospect, that's a red card every time. I don't know how that didn't become a red card. And poor Mandy Freeman for getting what feels like a makeup red card called against her.
Which I think is still, and there's some people who are like, oh, that happens a million times a game. It's like, did you see the angle at which the foot went out when Freeman stepped on it? That's a red card. The problem is what you just said, is that Howell's high boot did not get called for anything but a foul, which is insane.
That's a Jalen Howell before that moment had put together a really nice game. And I think is the midfield destroyer that this Juan Carlos Amaro system craves and needs. I was worried that her paired with Neely Martin would be a little too defensive. And instead, Howell played higher up the pitch, was winning balls and creating opportunities for an admittedly depleted Gotham attack. Gabby Portillo also looks like she has more than enough quality to play meaningful, good minutes in this league and be a very effective attacker.
I mean, her goal was quite dazzling. It wasn't exactly the most high XG chance on the planet, but
great technique.
Yeah, and the finishing is the finishing. So I thought she faded a bit as the game went on, but whatever, that's fine. It's game 1. What's funny is I kind of don't want to put anybody 4th, even though we have to.
Because it does feel like the gulf between here and 3rd, as we will get to.
At least based on week 1. I mean, things are going to change. It's the top 4, I think, is ultimately still the top 4. But I think maybe, Gotham 4th, Bay 5th at the end of the day.
So we both have Carolina 6 now. Bay 5, Gotham 4. I'm good with that as our week 1 XOG take. Bay has a lot closer to their full team than Gotham does. If Sarah Szczepanski is that extra winger, Gotham now has a lot of depth.
Exactly. And we'll talk more about her on Thursday on Patreon.
I buy the idea of being able to let go Lynn Biondolo if you have now Purce, Portillo, Szczepanski as wing option.
And also Esther and Ella Stevens through the middle. That attack is starting to look really sharp. And Lavelle's absence may be less painful than we thought it might be.
Totally. So I'm good to move Gotham up to 4, just given the quality
I'm good with that
they have. And a road draw when you're down a man for the final handful of minutes in Seattle in the rain. Washington started last season with a road draw in Seattle that was worse than Gotham's performance and ended up being a very good team, and Seattle ended up being a very not good team. I won't be surprised if that's the narrative this time around. Let's go to KC. We agreed on our top 3. So we're going KC, Orlando, Washington. Kansas City.
They're fine.
They're going to be just...
They're going to be just fine. Everybody chill out about whatever you thought you saw during the second half. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. This machine is fucking humming, baby.
They came out, granted, Portland's defense is real bad, but like they came out and just tore Portland to shreds. I don't know how you attempt to play anything other than deep against Kansas City, because Temwa Chewinga can make a handful of yards up faster than any player in the world. And it was kind of just a really good route one, well-timed run that led to the opener. Great finish on the opener, too. Michelle Cooper cutting inside. We're not big outside the box shot people, but she had a clear lane, plenty of time to shoot, a clear sight of goal, got her technique right, and was central when she took the shot. That's a really good outside the box shot. XOG endorses. That shot exists because, and frankly, Chewinga's goal exists because Debinha was a nightmare to play against for that entire first half and was good for her third goal.
You worried about her age-related decline? Not seeing it yet.
I think you could say that minute management is going to be a big deal for Kansas City this season.
But what's beautiful is that it doesn't matter because of how they can use Vanessa DiBernardo and Nichelle Prince. And Rocky Rodriguez as well. Like, there's so many ways you can start moving the chessboard around to cover for any injury or fitness-related absences or late-game-related absences from any of these players.
And Haley Hopkins.
Yeah. What'd you make of Elizabeth Ball coming in at fullback?
I personally didn't love it, but when you're dealing with Portland, you can absorb that. I don't know why Elizabeth Ball was subbed off after a perfectly dominant first half from Kansas City.
Maybe minutes management. I mean, it's like not the worst idea in the world, especially against a team like this, to bring her in. Because essentially, especially in possession, she was essentially functioning as a third center back because when they built out a 3-2 rest defense. So like, it didn't even really matter that she was being slotted in, quote unquote, as a fullback because she wasn't expected to be an attacking option. And maybe you just needed a half for her to get some minutes in her legs. And why not do it to this team? Because who cares? So I wonder if that's what's going on. More importantly, if you didn't think Mace could go and you needed to get some minutes for Ball and she fits the system that you want to play in position anyway, then this is probably the game to make that happen. So I don't know if that was such a major issue for me anyway.
They took a not very good opponent behind the woodshed, beat the crap out of them, let in one softish goal, but, you know, reports of Portland's dominance in the second half were greatly overstated.
They had their moment when Moultrie scored the goal, and they got some control at the end of the game after the missed penalty, but that's game state stuff, so take that with a grain of salt.
Kansas City ends this weekend with the largest non-penalty XG differential of any team in the league. They're fine. Before we find a landing spot for them, let's move on and talk Orlando. Wow.
They look like Orlando. They put 6 past the worst team in the league, which is what Orlando is supposed to do. Largely unchanged lineup from the Challenge Cup. They look right as rain.
What is there to say beyond Barbara Banda is essentially unmarkable?
If defenses have figured anything out about how to handle Banda, Chicago is not one of those defenses.
That's right. Whatever there is to know about defending Barbara Banda, Chicago doesn't know it. McCutcheon scores a really great opener, but that was the byproduct of a lot of pressure. Allie Watt scores a great header on brilliantly executed set piece. You end up with an own goal that is forced on by pressure rather than anything else. By the time Julie Doyle scores, this game is so dead. And then Banda adds a screamer and a high-quality chance.
B. Franklin, who was slotted in at center back yesterday, she had, I'd have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure this was the worst G+ rating of anybody across the weekend. She came out with a 1.0.
Yikes.
And you could tell. I mean, it was a brutal defensive performance from Chicago, but it was also absolutely scintillating from Orlando. Yeah, I got no notes other than that I'm intrigued by keeping Emily Sams at right back. I know Carson Pickett's injured, but when Carson Pickett is healthy, like, how are you going to fit all of those fullback pieces together and make sure everyone's happy? Like, I don't know, because you want Raffaelli in central defense. It's whatever. That's a question for another day. They're just so fucking stacked.
It did feel like in possession, what they ended up doing was letting Carriabello sneak up on the wing and allowing them to outnumber so that it looked a little bit more back three.
Yeah, again, they were playing rest defense, and it makes perfect sense to have Sams be your third player to fill that out.
Yeah, no notes on that back line. That back line did its job. Chicago kind of had a hoof and hope quality to everything that they were doing, which really just allowed Orlando to recycle the ball and beat the ever-loving crap out of them. Yeah, no notes. Orlando, real good team.
So the real question then becomes, what do we do about Washington? Because I would say that, like, just based on performances over the weekend, they would immediately slide down to third. But we know the state of their roster, and we know everybody who was missing and didn't get in the game. So I don't know if I want to keep them first or I want to slide them to second or third. Where is your head at?
My head says a team that was really diminished still went into Houston and played a controlled enough game to get the result on the road and are really good at minimizing opponent opportunity and minimizing mistakes.
You take Maggie Graham's goal out of it, basically all of Houston's XG goes away.
I felt like Bernal had a great debut.
Oh, yeah, she looked the part. She looks like she's ready to level up.
I thought McKeon had another solid performance. Casey Kruger didn't have her best game, which is still a fine enough game. My feeling is that's about as bad a front line as Washington's going to throw out this year. Chloe Ricketts looks like she would suplex you in a heartbeat and probably does deserve that goal. I'm not sure whether that ball went over the line or not that became Ashley Hatch's goal.
She does look stronger than she used to, which makes sense. I mean, she's 17 now.
Lacey Santos, Ashley Hatch, McKenna Morris, Chloe Ricketts. That's not the front four they will be starting shortly, not close to it. And they look just fine. Also considering that they did win the Challenge Cup, which doesn't matter, but it is a heads-up match against Orlando in Orlando. My inclination is to stick to our guns with Washington and say, look, I don't need a great performance. 3 points on the road in a game you really controlled, and then when you consider the game state you really controlled against a team that maybe surprised us a little bit with their quality in Houston.
I mean, Houston had a good second half. The few minutes on either side of the goal, like, they were kind of running the ship.
I am really open to saying this top three is pretty fluid.
Well, I think that's a perfectly reasonable argument to say we keep them all where we started with them. I think that's fine.
Well, let's name the argument best for and against.
I'm not that married to any argument with this group. I think, like, again, the Spirit would be the only one I'd really want to move, but we all know why they had the performance that they had. And I think you make a great case of, like, actually it might be a sign of just how good they are at the moment that they could have that specific performance with those players. So Washington 1, Orlando 2, KC 3, with the acknowledgement that it's really like 1A, 1B, I think it's fine.
Well, you said it. I'm in agreement with that. It is 1A, 1A, 1B. You know, Washington was the only one of the top three that had to go on the road in the opening weekend. For right now, let's call our week one season. Let's go back, and we have Chicago 14th. We have Houston 13th, Portland 12th, San Diego 11th, Seattle 10th. Then we kicked Angel City down to 9th. Utah 8th, Louisville 7th.
I thought we said Utah was 9th now.
I'm fine with that.
No, I thought that's what we said, though.
I don't remember.
I thought you're writing these down as you go.
No, I was dumb and I forgot to do that. So let's go with that. Utah 9, Angel City 8, Louisville 7, North Carolina 6, Bay 5, Gotham 4, Kansas City 1B, Orlando 1A, Washington 1. Done.
All right.
That's the show, guys.
That is the show. We've mentioned a few rookies today. We are going to dig into a lot of rookies First cups of coffee as professionals on Patreon on Thursday. If you are not a member of our Patreon yet, click the link in the show notes, and $6 a month or $60 a year will get you 4 exclusive bonus episodes every single month, as well as access to our Discord server and our semi-regular YouTube live streams. Follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X Own Goals. If you think we've made an own goal, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. As always, rate us 5 stars, drop a review in your favorite podcatcher of choice. Follow us on your podcatcher of choice, and tell all your friends about us.
I'm going to read these reviews because I said I would read them.
Oh, we have new ones?
We have new ones. First, highly enjoyable and perhaps the most consistently substantive content of the WOSO podcasts I frequent. Imagine how enthusiastic I would be if I actually liked data. Thanks, Felix.
That's outstanding.
That's outstanding. We love that review. Thank you so much for that review. The next one is Unmissable WOSO Analysis. Hands down, my favorite American soccer podcast, Smart Analysis, makes a case for data to take on a more prominent role in women's soccer discourse. It also features a sports unicorn, 2 white men willing to admit when they're wrong about something. Stars fan Kat, we thank you. We agree, we're morons, and we make mistakes all the time. So thank you so much. If you write us a review, I will read the review on the air, even if it's mean. Thank you so much.
If you are a member of our Patreon, we'll talk to you on Thursday. Otherwise, we will see you on main feed for week 2 of the NWSL season on Tuesday next week.
All right. Bye.